If you've been struggling to figure out how to invest in the Dubai market, you can't find any clear answers and things are getting overwhelming, then you've came to the right place. Recently, one investor came to me and said, Joe, someone just needs to create a blueprint A to Z, how to invest in Dubai as an overseas investor, okay? And now I'm not just talking simplified, I'm talking in-depth how to do it, okay? So in this video, we're gonna cover how to purchase off-plan directly from the developer, off-plan resale, which is similar to off-plan, but you're buying it from somebody else who's already purchased it, and then a ready property. And then I'm going to touch on financing and moving money to Dubai, okay? Because as a European, UK, overseas investor, it can be a little bit difficult to figure out and navigate, especially when you don't know anyone. My name's Joe Butler, and I deal with high net worth investors looking to invest in this market overseas. We help with wealth structuring, asset allocation, and strategies to help you purchase and look for the best types of investment strategies in the market. Me personally, I'm dealing with investors with a budget of over 5 million dirhams. If you are looking at spending a little less than that, then one of my team will be more than happy to help. Now, today's session is going to be a whiteboard session, so we're going to get straight into it, get your pen and paper ready, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to get into it. Here is the most simplified version for anyone watching from Europe, UK, overseas, on how to purchase properties. We're going to cover some different topics. First of all, the different methods of buying property. So buying off-plan, pre-development. This is directly from the developer. Okay, you've got off-plan resale, which is still buying it pre-development, but buying it from somebody else who's reselling. And then you've got ready. Now, the process for off-plan resale and ready is almost the same. There's just a few different things. For example, the most obvious one, you're just taking over somebody's payment plan on here, and the ready one, instead of taking over somebody's payment plan, you're getting the keys because it's ready. Now, the two other things which are important to cover are financing and moving money, okay? Because not a lot of people talk about this. It's probably one of the most complex things, you know, especially from Europe, UK. US, I don't know if this video is specifically for you because, to be honest, if you are from the US, unless you have like a good bank and a good relationship with them, it's very difficult at times to move money from the US without them raising questions. I mean, again, this really depends on the relationship with the bank, but I'm not here to talk about that. If you are from the US, you'll still find lots of value in this. And if you do have a good relationship, then continue to watch. Okay, so I'm going to make this video into 3 sections, starting with off-plan from the top. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the 5 steps. Now, I'm not talking about the steps when you know, from when you purchase it to when you get your keys, because there are some steps in between here, but we can have that conversation. You know, for example, when the property's ready. There's a bunch of steps after, you know, when it gets close to handover, but they're just more like getting the, you know, getting things in place, like paying the certain fees and stuff like that, you know, in order to get your keys to your property. But this is just how to buy it, okay? Because otherwise the video will go on forever. So number 1, provide all documents. I'm going to walk around so you can see. Provide all documents to the developer, okay? Passport, home address, email address, phone number, identification. This is basically, could be a driver's license. Not all developers require it, some do. And KYC, so I know your customer. Now on here, this is required by law to fill out, which is essentially, you know, you giving us where the proof of funds are. If it's a, you know, is it like inheritance? Is it your job? They're going to ask a little bit of background, okay? Now generally this is not too heavy in Dubai, but you know, it's very much becoming a regulated place. So you will get asked for these kinds of things, and we do need to provide something. So when the Dubai Land Department comes knocking at our door, if you've bought a property from me, I do need to provide this for them. Otherwise, I will incur a fine. Okay, now, if you are purchasing this property with your spouse or, you know, your friend or even, you know, your brother or your sister, all is what happens here is you just repeat these, okay? So let's say you've got a brother and a sister and you all want to own 33%. That is possible, okay? We can have 3 people on the title deed, potentially 4, but generally 3 is the max. Now, we're just going to need these twice, okay? So everyone who's purchasing the property is going to need these. And also when it comes to the signing, which we'll get to at the end, they're going to need to sign it. So if they're in 3 different parts of the world, because I've been in this situation, if they're in 3 different parts of the world, well, it's a little bit annoying, but you're going to have to get each one of them to sign it physically, but we'll get into that. Number 2, developer asks for a reservation fee. Okay, so like we've gone past the stage, we found the property, we know what we want to buy, we've got the unit, right, it's that crunch time, okay? So developer asks for a reservation fee. Now, this is generally just to secure your seriousness, because once we actually provide these documents, they will create a booking form, which we can sign, but that's not good enough to keep the unit, all right? They might say, you've got 24 hours, we've got all the documents, this client, here's a payment link, or here's the bank details. The client needs to send 50,000, 100,000, Really depends on, what you're purchasing. Now, sometimes developers skip this reservation fee and want to go straight to the down payment. Because let's say there's a massively in-demand project, let's say it's an Imar project, a new launch, Grand Polo or Oasis or whatever it is, where they know there's tons of buyers. They don't want 50K. They want you to probably put 10% down, all right? And they want you to pay the DLD, all right? So it kind of varies, but just be prepared. If you are purchasing property, you're gonna get asked for a reservation fee after you've signed the booking form. And you're not gonna get your SPA, you're not gonna get your sales purchase agreement in advance. Okay, this is not how it works in Dubai. People say, okay, well, I'm going to be paying a down payment. What's the agreement? We can maybe send you a blank SPA, so somebody, like a developer, can send you like an example of an SPA, all right, for that property. Okay, but it's not going to be the one with your exact unit and stuff in there. That comes after. Okay, so basically, reservation fee, booking form gets signed, and then you've got like 3 to 7 days, assuming that they ask for this reservation fee. Sometimes developers, you get 3 to 7 days to make a down payment. It was pretty fair. And I've put 24% because it's usually 24%. 20% down to the developer, 4% to the Dubai Land Department, 2 separate banks. 20% will go into escrow, 4% will go to the Dubai Land. Well, it will go to the developer's other bank account, like their main corporate account. From there, they'll pay the Dubai Land Department. But the 20%, which is actually for the property, will go into escrow, okay? Developer must have an escrow account. Now, so once you've done this, okay, that's like your property's secured. So now we're going to get to step 4, all right? So after you've made this down payment, 4 to 6 weeks later, okay, generally 4 to 6 weeks later, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 8 weeks, depends how far along the developer have come, your SPA gets sent out. Now it's going to get sent out physically or it's going to get sent out on email, okay? And you have to like print out 2 copies and you need to sign them physically. So let's say I've just bought a property and I print it out. Okay, and my 2 brothers are on the well, they own the property as well, 33%. Well, I've got my SPA, I'll sign it, Joe Butler in Dubai. Okay, then I need to send it to the UK where my brothers are. They need to sign it under my name and sign it all throughout. And then say 2 brothers, hopefully they live close, they've both got to sign it, then send it back to me or send it straight to the developer, okay? This is how it is in Dubai. You have to sign physically and your physical signature has to match it on your passport. Okay, if you're from Europe or the UK, signatures are long gone and just squiggle a line, that's all you do, quickly on a receipt or something like that. It doesn't mean anything, but in Dubai, your SPA signature matters. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Don't overcomplicate it. If you've got a complicated signature on your passport, good luck to you. Number 5, receive signed and stamped SPA back. So generally sometime after you've sent out your SPA back to the developer, they'll register it with the Dubai Land Department. That time can really vary. And at this point, you'll get your signed and stamped SPA back. And at this point, you also get your Okud, all right, which is your pre-title deed. To say that you or me, Joe Butler, I've purchased a property, this is my official pre-title deed, I own it, done, okay? So that's how you purchase off-plan, all right? We're gonna get into the moving money bit later, but that's how you purchase off-plan from the developer. Now let's get into off-plan resale and ready. Okay, so now off-plan, resale, and ready. Like I said, it's almost the same. There are just a few different technicalities throughout. Okay, and we're going to start from number 1. So as a buyer, you've got to, well, we as a broker will create your Form B, and the seller's agent will create the Form A. Now, this is a formality in Dubai. Everything is done through something called the Dubai REST application. Okay, the Form B is the buyer's form. The Form A is the seller's forms. Now, on these forms, this is just basically indicating and stating the buyer's details. Again, what we talked about before, passport, address, email, all that kind of stuff. That all gets uploaded into the Form B. Okay, and then the property price, the area of the property, and how we're purchasing it, and also like how much commission is being paid and those kinds of things, all right? So this is all done. Now this gets sent out to you as a buyer and you can read through it. Now at this point, there are no obligations, okay? It doesn't mean anything. You sign it, that's fine. If you pull out, don't worry, you didn't sign the final forms. This is just the Form B. You read through it, all your details are correct. You might say, Joe, you spelt my name wrong, okay? That doesn't happen, but if you did, okay, cool, we'll cancel it, we'll go back again. Or you might say, Joe, I wanna add my dad on it. Okay, cool, we go back, add your dad, go again, all right? Until we get that right, nothing happens, okay? And the seller's agent is gonna do the same with the Form A, okay? All the details about the property, and both contracts have a number. So now we can proceed, to create in the Form F, okay? So this is the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. So once this gets created, okay, the two numbers, the A and the B, well, the two forms, they merge together and then it becomes, you know, a real thing. And this is where, you know, once you sign this, there's no going back. Now, all the terms and additional conditions are going to be done at this point. Okay, so what I mean by that, there are always standard terms and conditions in the forms, but there might be some clauses. For example, you know, there's always clauses around banks because banks aren't always the quickest. And generally, okay, when you're purchasing a property, there's a 30-day transfer window, but of course, banks are going to take longer than that. So, you know, you'll just apply for an extension and, you know, basically there's no fees there's no penalty if somebody applies for an extension, or, you know, let's say the bank the bank doesn't release the final offer letter, then there are certain conditions where you do not lose your 10%, okay? Okay, so we're going to get into the 10%. So basically the form is created, and like I say, I'm kind of basing this off a cash purchase at this point because when there's way more terms and conditions if banks are involved, but it's okay. This is it's not up to me as a broker to kind of create all the terms, all right? I have conveyancers, okay? They're like your legal team. They're going to cost you between $1,000 and $2,000, okay? These are the guys that are going to control and take care of everything, all right? So they're going to be in contact with you. They're going to be in contact with the seller. They're going to be in contact with the developer. They're going to be in contact with the banks. That's not my job. I'm just here to facilitate, and then it's up to those guys to basically make sure you're protected, the seller's protected, everyone's protected, right? Okay, cool. Now, at this point, there's a 10% deposit. Now, generally, we have to show someone serious by taking a picture of a check in Dubai and be like, yeah, here's our 10% check, we're serious. Now, let's say you're not a resident, you don't have a checkbook in Dubai. This 10% deposit has to be paid to the brokerage. So for example, you will send our brokerage 10% and we will hold that money, okay? And we'll obviously sign a contract, everything will be, above board and everyone's protected, okay? Because this is a formality. This is basically on both the buyer's and the seller's side. What that means is if you sign the Form F and you back out, you say, you know what, I've got cold feet, I don't want to buy it anymore, that 10% is forfeited and it goes to the seller. Part of it goes to the seller, part of it goes to the brokerage. It's a formality in Dubai, didn't make the rules. Also happens on the seller's side. If he backs out, he's liable to pay the same, okay? Now, once you've read through that, you're happy, you sign it, done. We're on to the next stage, right? We're now making headway. So number 3, NOC gets applied for and paid. All right, so at this point, let's say you are buying a resale in Imar, whether it's ready or not. Okay, it doesn't matter because you still have to do the same. We have to apply for an NOC. So the conveyancer is going to go to Imar and say, listen, Imar, Joe wants to buy this property. This guy owns it. Here's the Form F. Okay, here's all the details of the seller and the buyer. We need to now transfer and switch ownership. Basically, they're given the approval to, say, yep, we agree. Joe can now give the property to Sam. Okay, cool. And then that needs to be all finalized and we'll get the NOC to say we're ready to go. And again, like they say, this is the conveyancer's job. And then once this conveyancer gives us the green light, well, at this point, we're good to do a transfer. Okay, and as I say, if it's a cash purchase and let's say it's a ready property and the seller doesn't owe any money on the mortgage and you're purchasing it cash, then it can be done within a week. Even with the off-plan resale, it can be done relatively fast. Now, what happens here, once the NOC is applied for and paid, now the payment can be a couple of thousand dirhams, and it's up to us in the deal to decide who pays for it. Is it the seller or is it the buyer? I mean, generally it's the buyer, but sometimes, we can maybe go halves with the seller and stuff like that. There's all sorts of clauses and conditions we can do, all right? But anyway, now, at this point as well, the seller settles any developer finance. What I mean by that is, let's say you're buying an off-plan resale and the seller's only paid 20%. Okay, well, he's not allowed to transfer the property. So someone's got, and let's say Imar, they want 40% paid before a transfer. Someone's got to cover that 20%. If the seller's selling you this distressed, he can't afford to pay that 20%. That means you've got to pay it. Okay, you've got to go and pay the money to Imar. Now, luckily, the Form F has been created, so you're okay, all right? You're legally protected at this point, okay? So we've just got to settle this. Again, if it's ready properties, it doesn't matter, right? But at this point, there's just a few things that we need to iron out, and we'll get that sorted and get that straight. Now, assuming all that's done, okay, now we start preparing the funds. Now, as a buyer, all right, as an overseas buyer, right, you can't transfer the money to someone. Okay, so let's say I'm the seller and you're the buyer. You can't just say, I'm going to transfer Joe the money. No, of course not. That's not going to happen. The formality in Dubai is a manager's check. Also hard cash, okay? You can pay hard cash for a certain value of property, but it gets a bit technical, you know, trying to find someone who can get all the cash here. And I mean, there are ways and means of doing everything in Dubai, but in this scenario, I'm going to just use the manager's check. Now, assuming that you're not you don't have a bank in Dubai, let's say, I mean, I know some people with HSBC, there's like, Dubai have a HSBC branch, and sometimes you can do things and get a manager's check. A manager's check is essentially a check from the bank that you give to the seller on the day. Okay, it's not a personal check, it's a guaranteed check that you've got, you know, you can go and cash in, and that's for a purchase of a property, okay? Now, most people don't have banks here, so we've got to get an exchange. Now, I've got plenty of exchanges, you know, all, you know, like financially backed exchanges in places like the AFC, you know, British owned and all that kind of stuff. And what they do, you set up an account with them. It's like an online Revolut or like a Monzo kind of account, multi-currency account. So if you've got euros and dollars, you can put all that money into there. And where they make their money is the exchange. They'll give you an exchange rate based on, well, every day is a bit different, right? So they don't charge 1%, 1.5%. No, they make money on the exchange. So when they transfer the money into dirhams, that's where they make their money. Okay, now they're not going to charge you for the manager's check. Okay, so you put, let's say, $1 million into the exchange, into your account. They exchange it, they make their money. All right, and now you've got however much is on the other side. If the exchange rate is usually 3.67 for dollars, they might charge 3.6. So you get 360,000 or 3.6 million dirhams. Okay, and they've made, say, 700. I don't know exactly what the exchange rates are on the day, but we can discuss this, right? But it's just to give you an example. Okay, now you've got your manager's checks, okay? So we're good to go. We're good. We're fired up. We're ready. We can go to the check. We can go to the trustee office, okay, which is like an official governmental office where we can do the transfer of the property. So for this point, we set a date. We need to make sure everything's aligned at this point. You know, the developers, we've got the NOCs, we've got the manager's checks, we've got everything. The seller can make it, the buyer can make it. You know, you're coming to Dubai. All right, let's say 25th of August, we can all do it, we can all be there. Perfect. All right, so 25th of August comes around, we go into the transfer office. I'll be there with my buyer, seller's agent should be there with his seller, and our conveyancer will also be there to just oversee everything, make sure everything's all smooth and straightforward. Now we've got to pay the DLD inside of the office. Can do that via, well, I mean, you can technically give them, do it on like an online portal. You can pay it on a card. It's up to you. I mean, there are a few ways to pay that, but we got to pay that on the day, all right? That goes directly to them. Then you got to pay a trustee fee, 5,000 to 6,000 dirhams plus VAT. Okay, so DLD and trustee office, that basically just goes to the government. And then you got your commission, okay? And I mean, your conveyancer fees as well, you know, you just give your guy cash, you can transfer him the money or whatever. Commission, that's 2% to the broker, the buyer's broker. Let's say it's me in this scenario. So you'll pay this to our company via bank transfer. This has got to be done on the day as well. I don't want you to leave, you know, some people say, oh, we'll send the money tomorrow. No, it's not gonna happen. We're doing the transfer now, send us the money or give us a check or whatever. All right, cool, done. Now, number 7. This is done probably like an hour, 30 minutes to 1 hour after we've done everything. Seller and buyer have shook hands. Everything's been paid. Everything's been squared off. Now we await the new title deed, okay? So literally within 30 minutes of leaving the trustee, or wait, well, you got to wait there. Within 30 minutes, you'll get a notification. Joe Butler, you are now the owner of this property, okay? So that's pretty much how that entire process works. Of course, there are many little formalities in between and things like that, but this is the simplified version. And it might seem overwhelming, but when you've got a great team behind you, you don't have to be overwhelmed at all. Even for me, if I had to go and apply for all the NOCs and do all that kind of stuff, speaking to banks, I would get crazy overwhelmed. But I have conveyancers for that, okay? We've got an entire framework for it. So you as an overseas investor, you know, are at peace of mind that you're taken care of. Okay, so as I mentioned before, there's 2 other topics to cover, and it's moving the money and financing. So I kind of already touched base on the moving the money thing. We have exchanges that are regulated in the Dubai International Financial Center who can handle your exchanges to get manager's checks. And as I said, there are fees along the way. Of course, if you're an overseas investor, you are going to be paying more. You know, until you actually get a bank account set up over here, you know, you are going to have to succumb to the fact that there are some extra fees to pay, a few palms to grease on the way to get your money into Dubai. All right? But it's all above board. And even if you have something like USDT, we can also handle these transactions with these types of companies. You know, again, they just make their money on the exchanges. Now, there are other companies out there as well that you may have friends who have used or whatever, and they might charge 1.5%. But, you know, there's also going to be an exchange an exchange rate, okay? Now, some of them actually just make money on the percentages that they charge. They might just charge a flat fee, 1.5, 1%, whatever, and then others make money on the exchange. Now, in terms of actually getting that money into these accounts, generally it's a little bit easier if you use these exchanges that are regulated, because your banks are going to see this as, okay, it's a legal entity, it's absolutely fine. Sometimes I've seen when users send money directly to a developer, let's just say for the off plan, because by the way, for off plan, you don't need to go and get manager's checks. You can just directly send the money to the developer's bank accounts, the escrow and then the corporate account, okay? But some banks get a little bit funny. Like I have a client from the UK and he sent £70,000 over into this, into this bank account in Dubai. Actually a British developer over here, but they froze his account. Now, it only was froze for 24 hours. They just thought it was fraudulent. He had to go to the bank, and when he got into the bank, they made the payment for him. They just asked you a few questions. At the end of the day, in Europe and the UK, they don't want the money to leave, all right? They're gonna be a little bit difficult. Why are you purchasing a property over there? What's the reason? Do you have any political ties? What's going on? Now, listen, as long as, everything is above board, you'll be okay. Some banks do get a little bit difficult. If they threaten to freeze your account and not let you move the money out of the UK or Europe, then we've got a serious problem. But everybody's doing it on a daily basis, so that's how that's done, okay? If you've got any other other things that you want to cover, if you've got cash or, there are other, if you've got Bitcoin and you want to get that into USDT and get it over here, can you send Bitcoin and all these kinds of things? If you've got more intricate questions like that, this is something we have a private consultation for, okay? And the final thing I wanted to touch on is the financing. Now, as a non-resident, you are eligible for financing. What rate depends, okay? So what loan to value depends. It could be 50%, it could be 60%. Now, one thing people make a mistake doing, they buy a property over in Dubai, they get their golden visas, okay, they become residents of the city, and then they think they can automatically go and get financing. But that's a topic for another story, okay? But if you do end up getting your residency through golden visa, you can't now apply for that non-residency mortgage. And to get a residency mortgage, okay, this is a total other video, but to get a residency mortgage, you need to have an account, like a business account, a business set up, you have to have a business account, you need to be paying yourself personally for a number of months or even up to 2 years, depending on the structure of the business. So in some cases, I recommend if you are looking to get financing, do it while you are a non-resident. Okay, and the process for that is, we get in touch with one of our mortgage brokers. They're going to ask you for a list of documentation. They might date that back 12 months. Now, in some cases, the banks can be a little bit of a headache. They're going to ask you for signed and stamped documentation from your banks. And that's not sort of traditional practice in the UK or Europe to get signed and stamped bank statements, but you have to request them, okay? Because at the end of the day, this is a foreign country giving you access to financing, okay? So you just got to do what they ask. Sometimes it's more simple, sometimes it's really low document, and sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. Depends what setup you've got at home. If you're a salaried employee on 20, 30, 40K dollars per month, then you're going to be laughing. They'll give you that money straight away. If you own a business, yeah, they're going to look at your bank statements and they're going to say, what's these invoices for? Can you prove that this money is actually coming in? Blah, 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 and these kinds of things. Now, the process for actually buying a property with finance is pretty much the same, but you can only use that finance on ready properties. You can't use it on off-plan or off-plan resale. Okay, but if you're using it on the ready properties, again, there are a few more formalities in the documentation. It's going to take a little bit longer. It might take 6 to 8 weeks to do the property transfer, getting your final offer letters, all that kind of stuff. But the process is generally the same, okay? And again, the conveyancers are going to take care of all of the legalities and the formalities within that, all right? Thank you for watching. I'm Joe Butler. As I said at the start of the video, I work with high net worth investors looking to invest a significant amount of capital into the Dubai market. We help with wealth structuring, asset allocation, and so much more. And it'll be a pleasure to help you. All what you need to do is book a call below, and I'll be interested to speak with you or my team, depends who's available for the call, and we can dive right into it. Thank you very much.